Just this past week, I got rejected by a prospect in the sales process. And I thought we'd be a great fit for them, and we had some great conversations, but it just wasn't the right fit. It was hard. I don't like getting rejected. But at the end of the day, it's a part of the sales process for every business. And it's a big part of what we do in CAS, facing rejection. So how do you walk through a sales process knowing that there's a 50-50 maybe likelihood that you're going to get rejected and then still come out on top on the back end whether or not you close the deal? Today we're going to walk through a couple of ways that you can respond to rejection and how not to take it so personally. So this past week, I got rejected and it hurt. I got an email coming back from a prospect that said, hey, we're going another direction and here's why. Now the reason was because we hadn't been in business for longer than 2 years. That one hurts because that's not something I can control. It's a factor that should have maybe been vetted on the front end of their own process of trying to discover who the right firm was for them. And so just by nature of spending my time on a prospect that I could have been disqualified from the get-go because of some arbitrary length of business requirement didn't really help anybody in that circumstance. So unfortunately, it wasn't something that I could really control. I think there might have been underlying factors at play there, but ultimately that was the response I was given. There's nothing I can do about it. And despite whether or not we are actually a higher quality service than anybody else, who's to say? I think that there's a lot of small businesses that can serve large businesses really, really well because they've figured something out that maybe some of the more long-standing firms haven't. That aside, I won't take it too personally because we cannot let sales rejections impact us emotionally to the extent where we get so wrapped up in that and it reduces our momentum forward pursuing other opportunities. The most common form of rejection that I think we face and that we see across the market is price rejection. It's just too expensive. Sorry, it's not going to be a good fit. And that's an indicator to me that somewhere along the sales conversation, the value proposition relative to what your price was misaligned. Either it wasn't communicated effectively on the front end, or it wasn't aligned with the problems that needed to be solved for that prospect. If it's a different issue and your pricing actually is out of line, that presents another situation. If you know that you're looking at market rates for what your services are, then that's not on you. That's simply on the prospect and potentially needing a different type of service rather than what you're offering. So that's not bad. If for some reason your pricing is out of line with where market is and they're rejecting you based on that, that means you need to go back and figure out why your pricing is misaligned and probably make some adjustments to that. That said, value your work. You should be pricing yourself appropriately. And if you're sitting in an advisor capacity for clients, you should be higher and more premium than the traditional accounting offering. Just make sure that as you get these rejections, as you get this feedback, if it's pricing, take note of that. Take a note as to, was the pricing too high? I recently had a conversation with a prospect that thought our pricing was too low compared to other bids that they were receiving. I'd never heard that one before, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to take these rejections and information and create a feedback loop for our sales efforts to ensure that we can address concerns more quickly in the sales process. We want to hit them out of the gates before we move down the path of scoping and proposing, because ultimately we don't want to move forward with a client or a prospect that has misalignment from the start. So the earlier that we can identify those, the better that it will be for both parties. Another rejection you may face is, you know what, we're just going to handle this in-house. Either hire full-time or kind of solve this problem with a variety of options that are not your firm or the type of approach that you have. That's an interesting one because I generally think that that comes from a lens of being a little bit less educated on the nuances of what's happening in the accounting and finance rhythms. And so for us, I think it's a matter of a lack of education around what we do and how we do it. And so it's a matter of explaining to your client what are the rhythms that go into creating a really healthy accounting function, a really healthy finance function. And that's a retort that I think can be more easily overcome when you're able to approach it through the lens of education. Hey, here are the things that you may face if you try to handle this internally with these types of resources. So you can come at it from a lens of not, hey, that's the wrong option, you shouldn't be doing that, but rather, hey, you should look out for these few things if you do choose to go that route. Otherwise, we'll be over here waiting for your call when inevitably it does go south. That's something that you may hear quite often is, we're going to handle this on our own. Who's to say whether or not that's a better option? Oftentimes, they come calling back. Another rejection that's not really a rejection, but a form of rejection is just ghosting. You send a proposal after having great conversations and you just don't hear anything back. Oh, it drives me crazy. Like, we've had a great conversation. Why would you not just respond to this one email? Like, it doesn't make any sense. That said, for any rejection that you receive, you should have a follow-up cadence. Hey, just wanted to check in, wanted to see if you had any questions on that proposal. Let me know, happy to set up some time to chat. And that should happen if you get ghosted too. So if you get ghosted, I would probably accelerate that rhythm of responding to a prospect by saying, hey, 2 days later, do you need any help? 5 days later, any question? 7 days later, hey, we have a time limit on this proposal. By completing it, here's what happens next. By not completing it, unfortunately, we may have to push you out a little bit further. So you're starting to create some urgency in that process. Now, if it's a rejection and not a ghost, the rejection sequence that I may look at post closing the opportunity is going to be a little bit lengthier. I'm not going to follow up after 3 days and say, hey, how's it going? I may introduce a monthly or quarterly cadence just to check in, see how things are going, see if there's any way that we can help with connections, introductions, referrals, things like that. It may be completely outside of the realm of what we do on the accounting front, but a good way to reconnect and reach out to those prospects that decided to go a different route. One of the important things about the sales process and facing rejection is just detaching the emotional component to it. It's really easy to get wrapped up and just feel very personally hurt by somebody didn't feel like I was qualified enough or our team wasn't good enough to be able to help them. Remove that thought. There are so many fish in the sea. There are so many options that if you take every single one personally, it's not going to be conducive to your mental health moving forward. You also have to keep a pipeline mentality. This is a pipeline. You're not going to win them all. You're going to have conversion rates. And so long as you're staying within a reasonable conversion rate of total opportunities, qualified opportunities down to closed won opportunities, I think you're going to be just fine. I generally look for about a 3-to-1 relationship of total net new opportunities down to closed won deals. And I think that 3-to-1 is kind of healthy. It means that I've got a good balance of pricing, a good balance of qualification on the front end to ensure that we have a really good pipeline that's pushing the types of clients that we want to work with into our firm. The last two things to hit on is that you need to be tracking the reasons why people are saying no to you. That allows you to create a feedback loop back into the sales process so that you can get better in your conversation with your clients. We talked about this a little bit a few minutes ago, where having the data points to reinform how your next conversation is going to go is going to be one of the best things that you can do as part of any sales process. Now, we want to make sure that we're starting to take these rejections and then in conversation with the next prospect, reframing those rejections through the lens of either educating a client, reaffirming the value proposition, or reaffirming how you price your product to ensure that there's alignment from the beginning of the conversation. So a good starting point is just starting to write down what common objections you face, what common rejections you've heard. Start to take inventory of that and document it somewhere. You want to start following up with lost opportunities and start to ensure that that pipeline is continuing to move even if you get rejected, because ultimately those folks, if you treat them really well from the front end, you provide some value in the sales process, there's a likelihood that they may come back around to you. So keep that pipeline moving and the follow-up cadence in motion. And then the final thing here, just reframe rejection as future business development. Always look for an opportunity to continue to add value above and beyond just what service you provide to see how you can help people, because that will be a continuation of your business development efforts as you continue to build relationships in the market. I hope all those steps are helpful as you think about getting rejected more. Nobody likes it. It's not fun, but you can use it as an opportunity to continue to fuel your firm growth, profitability, and success in 2025. I hope that's helpful. Till next time.